was consumed by the fire. And so the people cried out, the Lord is God, the Lord is God. And interesting that it's his name, Yahweh. Elijah is his name, Yahweh. They couldn't say Yahweh, so only said part of it. That's why his name means the Lord is God. His name is an act of faith. The Lord is God. So that's what they were saying, Eliyah, Eliyah, Eliyah. And so what did they do? He went and slaughtered all the pagan prophets. And if you see the old holy cards of the prophet Elijah, they become politically correct today because they don't want you to think that some saints might have anything to do with, warfare. Because if you see the old holy cards of the prophet Elijah, he's got a sword in this hand and he's got a head of a prophet in the other. They cut their heads off. So nowadays they sanitize it. They just have his hand down there with nothing. They went and photoshopped out the head in his hand. But he still has the fire. He has the sword up in the air.
So nobody gets offended?
No, they don't want anybody to feel like, that seems a little brutal. But that's what he knew, that it was a contest.
The Old Testament was very brutal.
Well, but it was also true to life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so he knew it was a contest to the death, and they knew it was a contest to the death. And so he slew all the prophets, and then afterwards he told Ahab, get ready. You need to get ready to go because there's going to be a great rain coming. And so he went up on the top of Mount Carmel with his servant, and he told his servant, go and look over to the sea. Go up on top and look over to the sea and tell me what you see looking out over the Mediterranean. And the servant goes, he says, and he comes and says, I see nothing. He says, go again. I see nothing. Second time. Third time. Finally, on the seventh time, this little boy who was his servant was probably thinking, what's going on here? On the seventh time, the little boy comes back to the prophet Elijah because he was praying. He had his head down to the ground praying. He said, I see a little cloud rising like a man's foot. It says in the Old Testament, in the old Douay-Rheims, it says, I see a cloud rising from the sea shaped like a man's foot. And at that, Elijah told Ahab, you better go, because now there's a great rain coming. And from that little cloud came this torrent of rain. Now, the Carmelites say that in that little cloud, Saint Elias saw, or Saint Elijah, because that's his same saint, he saw a vision of what was going to happen in the future. In that little cloud, he saw a type of Our Lady. The little cloud was shaped like a man's foot. It says in the more modern translations like man's hand, but that doesn't really help you to see the connection with Genesis 3:15. Because shaped like a man's foot helps you read, who will crush your head? You will strike at her heel and she will crush your head. So
you can't do it with a hand.
No, you can't, but she can, but a little man's foot. So the little cloud shaped like a man's foot is a type of Our Lady's Immaculate Conception. Because the sea is salty and heavy, but the cloud is light and heavenly without salt, meaning without sin. So the little cloud, he saw a vision of Our Lady's Immaculate Conception, and from that little cloud came a rain of grace, we say the mediation of her grace, being the Mother of God. So the Carmelites claim that vision, that prophecy has always been something that was handed down through them in the Carmelite order, because of course the Carmelites trace their roots back to Elijah, and that he established a school of prophets. We know that because there was a school of prophets, followers of his, when he anointed Elisha or Elisha to take his place. There was a bunch that were there watching, and then when he said, what do you want before the Lord takes me away from you? He says, I want to have a double portion of your spirit. He said, well, if you see anything, it's up to God whether you'll receive it. But before they crossed over the Jordan River, Elijah struck the water with his mantle, and the water divided like it did in the Red Sea, and they both walked across the Jordan River without having to wade over the water. So after they're on the other side, Elijah's taken up into heaven in the fiery chariot, and his mantle falls down to Elisha, and when he comes back to the Jordan River, he says, where is the God of Elijah? And he strikes the Jordan, and it divides. And all the other prophets on the other side who were of the same school recognized that he had the authority and the spirit of Elijah. So really, Mount Carmel is the first Marian apparition we'll put in. All these apparitions that have ever happened since then all have some common elements in them. Of course, as the miraculous, how did God manifest to the Israelites the truths that he wanted them to know or that he wanted them to pay attention to? He worked a miracle. Fire came down from heaven. And interestingly enough, some of these apparitions have even been closely associated with Mount Carmel. You know, the last time Our Lady appeared at Lourdes in 1858 from February 11th to July 16th. And 18 times she appeared. And the last time she appeared was on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And St. Bernadette, who was aware of the brown scapular since she was a little girl, said that was the most beautiful that Our Lady looked was on the day of on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And at that time, the grotto was already boarded up because they wouldn't let people go to it. They're trying to keep them away from the spring. So she could only see Our Lady from across the river. And then Our Lady appeared above the grotto on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So that's an association. We know that Fatima, of course, has a lot of connections with Carmel. The miracle of the sun, she appeared as Our Lady of Mount Carmel. She said, consecrate yourselves and consecrate Russia to my Immaculate Heart. And Pope Pius XII said that wearing the brown scapular is a sign of consecration to Our Lady's Immaculate Heart. And of course, Sister Lucy became a Carmelite nun. So these, but all of them have sometimes Our Lady appears on a mount, you know. Even the Cova de Ira she appeared on a little high spot there. Of course, she appeared on Mount Tepeyac in Guadalupe. It was on a mount. And always there's the prophets that she chooses are always these humble little souls, like the prophet Elijah. You know, all he was called to do was to give witness. He didn't do anything astounding except he lived the faith and he remained faithful to God. And when it came time, he just had such faith in God that somehow God's going to manifest the truth to these people, that only God can do it in a way that's going to convince them. And in the life of St. Francis, he kind of took a page out of Elijah and the Old Testament because, you know, St. Francis wanted to go to the Holy Land when he was alive, and he did get to the Holy Land, and he went there and he wanted to convert the Sultan to Catholicism. He wanted to go there and convert Muslims. He didn't go. That's why I hate that new version of the movie that they did on St. Francis. It made it look like he went there to, oh, you Muslims are so great. I have such admiration for your faith. Baloney. He went there because he wanted to convert the Muslims. And a matter of fact, when he went to the Sultan, he said, I want to show to you that my God is, my religion is the true religion. He said, build a bonfire. Build a fire, and I will walk into the fire along with your mullahs, your holy men. Whoever comes out unburned, unscathed, it represents the true God. All the mullahs, they disappeared. They didn't even stick around. And the Sultan said, well, I don't think there's anybody here to take your challenge. He said, well, then build the fire anyway, and I will walk into the fire. He said, if I don't come out, it's because I'm a sinner. But if I come out of it unscathed, you will convert to the church. And the Sultan said, I believe you. You don't have to do that. But he said, I can't convert right now for whatever reasons. But St. Francis said, if you convert, I'll make sure that before you die that there'll be friars will come and baptize you and receive into the church. So that's what happened. The Sultan is the only convert that St. Francis had. After St. Francis died, he appeared to two friars who said, go to this place, to this kingdom of the Sultan, and there'll be someone there to meet you and they'll take you. So when they went there was someone at the entrance of the Sultan's kingdom, and they took him to the Sultan and they baptized him into the church. But St. Francis was so disappointed. He said, oh, these Muslims, they're so aggressive and they're so bold, but yet when I gave them the biggest challenge to prove the truth of their faith, they wouldn't accept it. So he kind of took that
At least
from.
they were smarter than some of the others.
Well,
all those guys that did
So
the sacrifice.
so Mount Carmel, in some way, it was like the paradigm, the model of all Marian apparitions, and every one of them since then, it always follows some of those common elements of God works a miracle to emphasize something, to help bring us back to greater faith, to accentuate something that we make an act of faith, that we, and that even though private revelations don't have to do anything with your divine faith, they do something to help strengthen your faith. And so we can see that throughout the different apparitions, especially in the 19th century France, where the faith was greatly imperiled by the ruthless French Revolution and all the effects that came from it. Our Lady came at different times, not only for France, but for all the whole church, with these messages and with this grace that she wanted to give to them. So, and it's interesting that when the Bishop of Lourdes came on the 25th anniversary of Our Lady of Lourdes, which would have been 25 years from 1858, would have been 1883, he said that Lourdes is the new Mount Carmel. Because he said, what Our Lady showed the prophet Elijah in prophetic vision, she explicitly proclaimed at Lourdes, I am the Immaculate Conception. So that he saw that connection, and I had this holy card, and I don't know if I can ever find it, but this is a holy card that I got. It's an icon of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. It's French. It's got Saint Bernadette on one side, and it's got the prophet Elijah on the other side, and it's Notre Dame du Mont Carmel, but it's actually Our Lady of Lourdes. But it's you should take a look at that, pass it around. But it's interesting that connotation is made with Mount Carmel and Lourdes, and we're going to talk about that some more as we go on in this retreat. So that is why I think France is, and there's still, and then we will find out that some of the prophetic messages is that France is supposed to come back into the church. It once again will become a great bastion of the faith. When we look at France right now and say, wow, that's going to be a big miracle.
Better take a miracle.
It'll take a miracle only God can do. But we continue to pray, and we're going to end this because we're going to start our devotion here, exposition of the Blessed Sacrament shortly. And while we're going to expose the Blessed Sacrament, and then we're going to have night prayer. And then after night prayer, I'll go and I'll make myself available for anybody who would like to go to confession. And then while you're praying the rosary, and if you want to, you can retire at any time if you want to, but the adoration will go until midnight. Then we'll have probably around 11:45. We'll have benediction. So.
But the question is, can we cover it till midnight? I know people are looking pretty tired.
Well, whenever they decide you want to end it, then we'll...
Because you'll be in a confessional, so you have to come to repose the Blessed Sacrament.
I have to do benediction and repose it, yeah.
Okay, so I just
So-
wanted...
I'm not gonna make it during the night.
I don't think I will either tonight because of last night.
11?
Anybody hang until midnight?
I just... The other thing that Father Bart told us to do is he would just have the Blessed Sacrament and tabernacle that way. Of course, that would free him up to go back to his cabin. And then the last person could close the tabernacle, but we didn't have benediction. But I just wondered, the group's looking pretty tired tonight. I think, we're having I'm just asking. Who's going to make it till midnight?
I'm flexible, whatever. I'll do whatever.
You're amazing. You're going to make it till midnight.
I don't know if I'll make it to midnight.
So whenever you want to, you can just come in and do benediction.
Well, whenever part of it is whenever confessions end, then I can come out and I like to spend a little time in prayer.
Yeah.
And
But,
Father, but you'll also hear, we also hear confessions other times.
Yes,
because
yes.
Fred-
Tomorrow
Fred-
there'll be some time, maybe after lunch.
Okay.
Well, some of us are new enough and we might have hours worked up just we'll spare you all the details. We'll just go
Wonderful.
for
Yeah, I
it.
mean, yeah, it's wonderful talks. I'm just looking. So